Hey everyone! So a few art videos ago I did a sketchbook tour because I kind of finished my latest sketchbook, and at the end I talked about how I made a brand new sketchbook. I made this thing with the intention of showing you guys how I made it and making it into a series of videos to show you guys how you can make your own. So here we are with the very first video of the series. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make the text block, and I guess it's also going to be a little mini tutorial on how to make a book sewing jig kind of thing. You'll see what I mean when I get to it in a little bit. And with this you can add any kind of cover you want for a sewn corded style book like this is. But for mine I'm doing the kind of reusable, changeable kind of cover. So let's get started. You'll need paper. I just tore mine out of this sketch pad. Heavy duty thread and a needle, PVA glue, a book press if you have one. I don't, so I just used some wood and clamps. Cording, a book sewing jig. I'll get into how to make a makeshift one of these when I get to that part in the video. Ribbon, tissue paper, embroidery thread, heavy duty paper, something like cardstock or poster board, scissors, and a utility knife. Whew, alright. So, cut your paper down to size. You want it to be as tall as you want the book by twice the width that you want. So, for me, I cut mine to be 7 inches tall by 11 inches wide. This will make it so that when I fold it in half, the final size of the book will be 7 by 5.5 inches. You also want to be sure that you're cutting the paper so that the grain of the paper is running up and down. You do this so that if your finished book gets exposed to liquid, which, let's be real, with a sketchbook there's a high chance, what with watercolor and other paints, that's going to happen. The paper will warp and curl in such a way that it won't ruin the spine. If the grain is running from side to side, the paper will try to warp in such a way that would make the spine want to curl too, which is not very good, and it'll destroy the spine pretty quick. Generally, you can figure out the grain of the paper by gently folding it in half, but don't press it down enough to crease it. One way should go down a little bit more, and that means that the grain is running up and down along that fold, if that makes sense. I've touched on this in other bookmaking tutorials that I've made as well. If you can't figure out the grain, the easiest thing that you can do is to just use paper from a sketchbook or sketch pad and keep the paper oriented in the direction that it came out of said book or pad, like what I'm doing here. I took paper out of the sketch pad, cut it in half, like so, and then I folded it in half here, which is the same orientation that it was in the pad. You can make the text block as big or as small as you want, but for me, I did 21 pages. So then, after everything's all folded and put together, it'll make it 42 pages per book. Stack the paper, 3 sheets together to form one signature. For my book, I had 7 signatures. Stack all of the signatures together and stick them into a book press, or in between some wood and clamp them together, and then let them rest like this for a couple of hours. While this is clamped together, you can mark the spine. You'll want to go in about 1/4 of an inch in on each side, and then make one mark in the middle, and then finally make one mark on either side between the mid mark and the edge mark. The distance you do depends on the size of your book. For me, I went out about 1.5 to 2 inches away from the midpoint on both sides. So in the end, you should have 5 marks. Then poke out each hole with an awl, a sewing needle, a safety pin, a push pin, whatever works. Now, if you don't have one, you can put together a book sewing jig. I took a plank of wood that was a good size bigger than the text block, and then I drilled holes at the corners big enough to fit these long bolts. And then I used a spade bit to countersink the heads of the bolts so that it'll sit flush whenever I flip it over. Take a square dowel that is as wide as the wood that you just drilled into, and then drill holes that match up with the wood plank, but drill all the way through. Stick the nuts onto the bolts, and then place the wooden dowel like so. Ideally, you'd have some butterfly nuts or something to help secure the wood dowel thing. I was just going to count on the tension of the cording to hold everything together. Place your text block down and mark the 3 spots from the middle of your text block down onto the edge of the wood plank, and then nail a nail in at these marks. And this is what you should have. So now, cut 3 lengths of cord, tie one end to the nail, and then tie the other end to the square dowel. Once they're in place, you can adjust the tension by adjusting the nuts. And now you're ready to sew. Place another piece of wood, or a book or something. You just want something to give you a little bit of a gap, probably about an inch or so, right here, and then place one signature. Thread a length of heavy-duty string onto a needle, and then starting at one end, from the outside, thread through the first hole. And then from the inside, thread out of the next hole, making sure to thread it on the other side of the cording. Bring it around the cord, and then thread it back through the hole that you just came out of. Repeat this on the next 2 cords, and then thread out the last hole. Place the next signature, thread into the hole above the one that you just threaded out from, and then sew around the cords like before. Now, when you get to the other end, take the extra thread and tie a knot. Add the next signature and repeat sewing the signature in place. When you get to the end of this one, thread back through the last stitch, looping it around like so. Then place another signature, sew, and then again, thread and loop through the last stitch. Repeat this until you've sewn in all of your signatures. Release the text block from the sewing jig by either untying it or cutting it free. But make sure to leave a good amount of cording on both sides. Later, this will be used to tie the blocks onto the cover. Place the text block back into your book press, or wood pieces that you clamp together, and then make the spine stick out just a tad. Apply glue all over the spine and let it dry. Oh yes, and here you should take a length of ribbon that's as tall as the book, plus a couple inches, and then glue it to the spine at the top, like so. After it dried, at this point I wanted the edges to be flush, so I tried using a utility knife with a ruler to cut the edge, which kind of worked. I'm not sure if it was totally worth it though. It kind of ended up being a waste of time. I don't know. But after that, I used a corner punch to make the corners rounded. This part, in my opinion, was totally worth it. And now to sew the headband and tailband. I made a whole video explaining how to do this step, so in an effort to keep this video from being way too long, go check that video out if you're interested. It's a totally optional step. I think that it just adds a nice little handmade feature of the book, I guess. I don't know. Anytime I make a handmade book, I try to add a headband. I just think it looks really nice. I'll link the video down below and up in the corner. So once the head and tail bands are in, it's time to add the cover. Well, kind of cover. This is another optional step, but I wanted there to be a cover page that I could cover with stickers and whatnot without messing up the reusable cover that I'm going to make later. Cut a piece of cardstock, or like in my case, poster board, to the height of your text block by 2 times the width plus the width of your spine. Place your text block down in the middle and then mark out where the cording is. Then cut slots where the cording can be pulled through, like so. Apply glue to the spine area, and then glue the cover in place. And then just let it dry. I ended up going back and adding washi tape to the spine, but that was mostly just a decorative thing. And, well, that's about it. Text block, done. After you make this text block, you can make a kind of cover that goes with a corded book, but I'm going to be doing the reusable cover, which I'm going to be showing you guys how to make next week. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please leave a like, feel free to subscribe, hit that notification bell, all of that good stuff. You can follow me on all of my social media, which will be linked down below. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, please leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much to my patrons for helping me produce this video. If you like my videos and have learned something from them, please consider supporting me on Patreon to help me continue to make them. It's totally optional. I'll still be making videos either way. It just helps me be able to put out better stuff. A link will be down below, or you can just click up here in the corner.